Outside of the hotel, flowers were falling on the floor. Beautiful. And the first thing that happened was somebody was sweeping them up. And I thought, let them be. Let chaos and beauty just exist. That was my impression that was actually making me say, I'm not sure I wanted to come.
Meet Dr. Phillip Merry, a British citizen who has lived in Singapore for over 30 years and served as a senior United Nations consultant. He shared with me his encounter with Lee Kuan Yew, why he never pursued Singaporean citizenship, and how he compares the Singapore government to Western ones. Let's go.
My impression before I came was that it was too organized, too neat and tidy, and too many rules. Typical impression that Singapore has worldwide, but how can I say, happy that that's not been the case since I've been here.
No?
No. Culture-wise, Singaporean is a lot more group-oriented, meaning taking care of the group itself, belonging to a group, as opposed to individualism, which is much more in the States, in the West. I like it that I feel safe. My wife is safe any time of day or night. I like it that I can be in T-shirt and shorts any day of the year. Don't forget, I come from the UK, where 4 months of the year we hibernate. All those first impressions about constriction and all the rest of it really totally changed once I came here. And particularly when I set up my business. I mean, Singapore, I set up my business in 1991, could not have been easier. And all through the years, it's been a great place to do business and a great place to live. And I'm biased because I'm married to a Singaporean. First impressions, not sure. Living here, love it. I have a picture of this place. And I say to people, I lived here for 33 years. Which buildings were not here 33 years ago?
Not here.
Not here 33 years
like,
ago.
I mean Marina Bay Sands.
No, clearly Marina Bay Sands was not here. Clearly the wheel was not there. Clearly the Esplanade was not there. Clearly the flying saucer, which is Singapore's courts, is not there. Now there's one other thing, which they always miss. What do you think it is? Put your camera that way.
What was not there?
What was not there? So we know Marina Bay Sands, the wheel.
Okay, Fuller's not there. Government buildings probably also there.
No, that's where you're wrong. This building here with the red roof is Singapore Parliament. 30 years ago it wasn't there. Parliament was on the other side.
How Singapore changed through these years you're here? And do you think that the society is more mature now, the Singaporean society?
I think one of the great things about Singapore is its pragmatism. Singapore knows, through its leader, Lee Kuan Yew, and I talked to Lee Kuan Yew twice in my time here, the more Singapore grew and developed, it knows it has to adapt itself to an international community. So I remember when I first came, they used to ban transvestites from walking around the streets and showing themselves, because it wasn't seen to be acceptable so much. And they lost a sense of belonging and community, I think, of involvement. Now, they're actually encouraging much more diversity, I think, and much more multiculturalism in its best sense. Still got a long way to go, but what I think is good about Singapore is the way that it actively takes to court people who offend against any of the races in Singapore. And I'm really proud to tell people I'm from Singapore because it does that. And I think a lot of nations could actually take that lesson too. So I think it's matured, it's changed some of its laws, and I think it's much more accepting of diversity in a broad sense than it was 30 years ago when I first came. And that's to me the beauty of Singapore. It's pragmatic. Lee Kuan Yew said very specifically, whatever is good for the citizens of Singapore, we will adapt ourselves to ensure that Singaporeans have a good life. And I think that's to be honoured. I think when I met him at a conference. And when Lee Kuan Yew speaks at a conference, people don't like to ask questions. And so the chairperson says, any questions for Mr. Lee? Nobody says anything. So
Everybody afraid?
I have a question. So I said to him, and this was probably 1994 in a conference, why do Singaporeans find it difficult to leave Singapore? Because in my work, you didn't used to get Singaporeans going overseas. And Lee Kuan Yew, Prime Minister Lee, said, I think we've made Singapore too comfortable, which, again, wise guy. And I think that's absolutely true, that Singaporeans, and it's both a good thing and it's potentially a problem, because good in the sense of, this is Singapore. We feel home here. We commit ourselves to Singapore and all of that. But sometimes it means there's not so much sense of risk in the sense of trying something new and going abroad to actually learn stuff. I mean, I don't know about Russia, but certainly for the UK, people used to go abroad just to experience something different. And I think sometimes Singaporeans miss out on that.
I actually met some Singaporeans, and I go to Malaysia quite often.
Okay.
Even to Johor Bahru, like for biking, for motorbiking, and
Right, right.
to Melaka. And some Singaporeans say, "Oh, it's too dangerous in Malaysia." It's like, I mean, come on, guys, you across the bridge is like, I mean, it's a different country, but it's not like super duper dangerous as you think.
I used to live in JB.
Yeah.
So I know that. So I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because Singapore takes care and is so good, I mean, lots of things to improve, of course, but a sense of belonging and a sense of nationalism and a sense of safety and security is good, but it does mean taking risk might be a little bit difficult sometimes. But they learn. They learn from what other people have done. The second time I was in the same conference with Lee Kuan Yew, 4 years later, I said, "Mr. Lee, you may not remember me, but 4 years ago I asked you a question." And he said, "What do you do?" Now this is in front of a whole audience. Again, after they'd asked for questions and nobody was saying anything. And I said, "So what do you think Singapore can learn from overseas countries, different countries?" And he told this great story. He said, "When we were deciding where to put Changi Airport, we didn't know. And I went to Boston, and as I landed in Boston, I saw that we had the airport right next to the sea. And so he said, it made me think. And then I came back to Singapore, and then we changed the location of the airport to Changi."
It was different location?
They were thinking of different places.
Yeah. I think they're thinking like to extend Seletar
Yes,
area.
they were thinking to extend Seletar, but what Lee Kuan Yew said in answer to my question was that I learned that, that's not a bad idea. And from there, he said, we moved to Changi. So I think that Singapore is really good at being able to learn and adapt from other cultures and make it even better here.
What do you think the main challenges in the future of Singapore?
I think one of the challenges is ensuring, and it's a tough one, but ensuring in political terms that there is a sense of everybody's voice is heard. I think for a long time, and quite rightly, Singapore has said, listen, we are developing a country, we can't afford alternative ways of doing things, we're building the country, we'll make sure that citizens feel okay. So I think that one of the challenges is to continue down that route of ensuring that people do feel that they are in a country where all the voices are heard. So I think that might be a challenge going forward. There's always, I think, the potential of too much political control sometimes, but I can see why that's necessary. And when I look at the shambles sometimes I see in the British Parliament, I think, thank God for Singapore, where there's common sense and there's mature individuals in politics, because when you look at the States, when you look at the UK, I don't really enjoy or respect what I see. So I like that part of Singapore. So challenges, I'm not so sure, but I think that as things go forward, maintaining a sufficient level of income for all Singaporeans and being able to deal with differences when they're expressed and deal with them maturely, I think is one of the challenges. Potential challenges.
Singapore that was the developing track. Now it's pretty much developed.
Overdeveloped. Listen, Singapore's got things way beyond certainly basic things that I would find in the UK. I remember when I first came to Singapore, I was in this apartment up here and I was buying a TV. I was buying a TV in one of the shopping malls over here, and the guy said to me, "So when do you want it delivered?" Now, me thinking it's going to be delayed, I said, well, I'd like it at least next week. And he said to me, "Would you like it today?" I said, "What do you mean delivered today?" So I think in terms of some of the basics, I mean, Singapore is way beyond some of the other cultures in the world. And I think that's a good thing.
How do you feel when you travel back to the UK?
There are places that I go to, like I used to go a lot to the Lake District in the UK, and I feel very much at home there. I used to live in London for 10 years, and I love London. But when I go back, my sense is, thank God I don't live here anymore. When I compare, when I walk the street here or go to shopping mall or supermarket, I get a sense of belonging. I get a sense of people are comfortable to talk to you and ask you how you are. And I'm a friendly guy. When I go to the supermarket, I've got people that I know and I can say, hello, how's your family, blah, blah, blah. I don't get that sense in the UK. I get a sense of very much sometimes a hostile culture a little bit. It's not so friendly and easy as Singapore for me. Now, I know probably a lot of people would say different, but I find Singapore a good place to be in terms of people contact and sociability compared to the UK. But I love the UK. I love football. I love the beauty of the UK in terms of its natural. And so I'll always enjoy that. But if you ask me Whereas home, it's like a two-leg stool. Probably I feel at home, I feel I'm British, but I feel and I'm happy to be here in Singapore. My great-grandmother was Indian. My great-grandfather was in the British Army, Irish, but in the British Army. Went to India in the mid-1860, I think. Met and fell in love with my great-grandmother. We got pictures of her still. They had 12 kids, but they went back to the UK. So I've always had this, I don't know, just a sense of Asia is a great place to be. That place there is the penthouse I lived when I first came to Singapore. 5-bedroom penthouse, one person. And I loved it there.
Yeah.
I was so glad for Reuters, they paid my rent. And then I moved to the 11th floor when I started my own business.
What's the prices for, like, let's say 2-bedroom here or 3-bedroom? Like, what's the range?
Probably 4,000 or 5,000.
You get hired if, let's say, the company, corporation has some intercultural problems in the company, in a team. Can you give like some examples? What could it be? Like, let's say in Singapore, are there any like Indian, Chinese tension and this kind of thing?
I was asked by a big global bank to say, we've just transferred 4 of our best Japanese executives to New York because they're smart to make a contribution to projects that we've got going in New York. He said, but we think it's a failure. I said, why? They said, because they don't say anything. That's because in New York, conversation in New York, we interrupt each other, we shout at each other, whereas in Japan, they wouldn't confront and they would only say what they've got to say once you finish your sentence.
Yeah.
And if you wait until somebody's finished their sentence in New York, you'll wait forever. So I was asked to work with these 4 Japanese, basically teach them to go against their Japanese culture. Meaning, look, if you interrupt your boss in those project meetings, that's a good thing. If you and I had a problem, then from my culture, and maybe your culture, I don't know, we'd say so straight away. Max, I'm not happy with you. You did this, you did that, you did, stop it.
Yeah, it's also like, and Slavic culture is pretty straight away.
Yeah, straight
you go to
and
the
direct.
point.
That's a cultural mindset. Whereas in many organizations, that's not the way to deal with conflict. If I'm in dispute with you, I'll do everything I can to make sure we don't break the relationship by confronting it in public. We
Yeah.
still find a way of dealing with conflict. I'm called in those types of situations where there are many differences in perception about how to communicate, how to handle feedback, how to handle conflict, how to handle non-performance. And unless one side understands the other, then it's not going to work. And it goes both ways. A lot of people say it's the Westerners that should adapt. No. Good, cross-culturally literate leaders and teams know that if I'm brought up a Singaporean and I'm typical in the sense of I don't question the boss or confront the boss, I go work in New York, I've got to learn how to do that. I was working with a big Australian and Singapore organization who were establishing partnership. They were establishing partnership particularly about how you approach customers that are not performing as they should in terms of the contract. I remember we did a role play, and this is a true story. I said to my Australian colleague in the seminar, make sure when you do the role play, remember you're speaking to a very senior local person in the role play. Make sure you show politeness. And I said, okay, do the role play. I didn't see any change in the role play. I said, stop. I said, Fred, not his real name. Fred, I said, show respect. The Australian said to me, I did. I only swore at him once.
How old are you again, if I may ask?
I was born in 1949.
Yeah.
I'll be 74 in December this year.
Okay, so 73.
That's my physical age.
Okay.
Inside, I feel like 16. When I think about 73, I'm 73. When I was young and I thought about 73-year-olds, I'm thinking, they're already way past it. You know, they're heading 1 foot in the grave. The funny thing is that now being 73, I don't feel 73 at all. And I think that part of living is you are as old as you think you are. And I've met many old 26-year-olds, and I've met many young 73-year-olds.
Yeah.
Why do we, after 65, kind of say to people they are retired and 1 foot in the grave? When you're over 65, you're the most mature that you can be. You've had various jobs, you've had relationships, you've been married, you've had kids, whatever. That's when you've got the most wisdom. I wake up every morning, my balcony up there, and say, what amazing things can happen today? And I think just keeping that sense of what an incredible life we are blessed to have, what adventures we can have. I was born as the son of a coal miner in Derbyshire in the UK. My dad became a Christian minister, so I often think about, had I stayed in that mining town in Derbyshire, what would my life be like now?
Yeah, different for sure.
So I'm just always amazed, age-wise, that anything is possible at any time.
Do you have any regrets in life?
I wish I'd bought a house earlier, because I think one of the great things is that once you don't have financial troubles, you can really focus on what it is that you want. I had a house in South London. I actually sold it, and had I kept it, it would be worth 2 or 3 million more than it is now. That's number one. That's a minor thing, but it's a monetary thing. But money is important, and I think that if you are financially secure, you can actually do the things that you really enjoy doing. Biggest regret, and I'm just thinking intuitively here, I wish I'd said more often and earlier to people in my life who mattered to me how much I love them. I'll never forget my parents when they came to Singapore. I hadn't said that very often, and I love both my parents. They're both passed on. And I remember I sat them down and I said, Mum, Dad, I've got something to say to you. And they said, what is it? I just want to tell you how much I love you. I do it more often now, but I think that's one of the regrets.
What's the meaning of life for you?
Well, it's two things, and I think they're connected. The meaning of life is to fulfill the hidden potential that you have. All of us are incredible human beings, and all of us have so much to give, but so often we don't explore what we have to give. So I think that the meaning of life is to actually become all that you are meant to be. But the second that's linked to it is actually linked to it, they're equal. You do that by serving and helping other people. I've noticed in my life, and maybe you as well, and maybe some of the listeners, when you are consumed by a problem, you think, oh, what am I going to do about this problem? And then suddenly a friend comes who needs your help. You immediately go and help, and you sort out whatever it is, big or small problem. And then when you come back, you say, what was I thinking of? And actually the trouble or the issue you'd thought about is gone. It's a two-pronged thing, Max, is be everything that you can be and serve and help and love other people, because that's where you'll get equal meaning.
If you want to hear more stories of inspirational, fun and impactful people, watch the next video. I promise you will enjoy it. No, seriously, you will.